Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rajat Gupta. Mr. Rajat Gupta is the CEO of Tesol. With a strong inclination towards technology and his passion for product development, Rajat is the mastermind behind Tesol's proprietary technology and its chief innovator. Mr. Rajat brings in deep understanding of product design, technology commercialization, and market entry strategy, and has been instrumental in leading the organization from its inception to date as its CEO. Today, we are honored to have Mr. Rajat as a guest speaker, and he will talk about end to end cold chain monitoring and compliance. So, without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Rajat.
Just continuing the topic of cold chain monitoring, I just wanted to sort of give a sense, based on our experience over the last several years. What are the key elements that we find missing in most of the customer discussion that we have is an ability to understand whether the performance of the system is up to the mark or not, whether your temperature is being maintained, your product is being kept in the desired temperature range as required for, basis the quality parameters that are defined. And more so, you would find that some cold storages, like the last cold storages that we spoke about, they would have some kind of a temperature monitoring system. Maybe some of the long distance trucks would have. But the moment you come into secondary distribution and last mile distribution, there is hardly any monitoring which is being done. And therefore, there is a huge gap, right? So you're not really, you're doing this activity on a daily basis, but you don't really know whether it's yielding the right set of results. And if something goes wrong, you don't know why it went wrong and where it went wrong. So in our view, figuring out a way in which one can create an end-to-end visibility on the temperature compliance becomes a primary problem statement at this point, especially when we are talking about introducing a lot of technologies, new technologies into the mix. So one of the things that we realized is that the conventional monitoring technologies, considering of a very large number of variables being studied across all kind of equipment, is not really a very scalable solution. The primary reason being the cost of deployment and cost of operation. So again, when you look at a very large cold storage, it may still be viable to put in a system like this. A system typically where a temperature monitoring system may cost you upfront about 6,500-7,000 rupees. But if you look at a cold store where a small cold room or a few deep freezers where you would spend about 20,000-30,000 rupees or 100,000 rupees, you may not want to spend a whole lot of money in actually just monitoring it. And therefore, the overall CapEx and as well as the OpEx, because they would all have a SIM card in it and there's a running cost of it, etc. So that becomes a more expensive proposition. Most people don't want to indulge it. The second is, even if you set this up, cold storage will have its own set of data. The truck that you're picking up will have its own set of data. And your distributors may or may not be using those small data loggers that they will put in another USB data loggers that they'll put inside and send the data to you in the form of a PDF. So it's almost impossible for you to put together where the problem really happened, right? On an ongoing basis, unless there is a very big breach that happens and then you have to go back and check each and every point. It's very difficult for you to really create a proper visualization of this, of your supply chain. And finally, with the kind of way things are changing, for example, an operator like Swaroop, who's actually operating across so many different warehouses, which may or may not be owned by them, it's very difficult to, set up devices, power connections, set up all the wiring in all these warehouses. You may be using one chamber today, maybe two chambers later on. So the solution scalability doesn't come in easily with the current type of solutions. And I would like to sort of create a parallel of what this kind of a technology is versus what would potentially be scalable is something like a LAN versus Wi-Fi, right? So how many of us are actually now using LAN and how many of us have moved on to Wi-Fi because of the simple ease of use and, very easy sort of adding of devices, removing of devices, etc. And therefore, the solution that we think will make a significant impact is a complete wireless hub and node kind of a system, which we've implemented in a few places and I'd like to sort of briefly touch upon. So it contains actually three main elements. One is a node, which is a wireless battery-based device, which keeps recording the information and keeps sending the information. And even if there's nothing, if there's nobody to accept the information, it keeps storing information for whatever 10, 15, 20 days, depending upon what the memory is. And there is a hub which is installed somewhere in the warehouse or somewhere in the facility, which can keep getting this information and sending it to the cloud. Now, this is the only wired element which can be just put wherever there is a power connection available. Rest of it is all wireless and can be put wherever it's easy, just using a normal, double-sided tape or a Velcro or whatever is available. And if you don't have a hub, then you can actually convert any smartphone into a hub, and the smartphone starts sending data to the cloud. So if so these are very, very simple, easy to use elements, and the way they would typically end up showing in any kind of a facility is, you would have the same element put inside maybe a cold room, inside a blast freezer, deep freezer, boxes, bags. If you have a truck, next slide, I'll show you how it works in a truck. But basically, all of these elements put inside. If you think of simply as your home, you've got one in your drawing room, one in your bedroom, one in your office room, one in your kitchen, one in your bathroom, and all of this is just sort of created a network, and all of this is sending the information to a central gateway or to a mobile phone, which is then sending it to the cloud, and therefore you get all the information completely collated as a user, either on your phone or your desktop. So the implementation of such a technology becomes very, very simple, easy, do it yourself. And if you were to look at the economics of running an IoT kind of a business, one of the key elements that become cost and that lead to the major failure in which we have sort of observed in the last few years is actually the maintenance cost, the number of times somebody needs to visit, somebody needs to install, somebody needs to troubleshoot. But if you think of the device cost, a device that costs you, a couple of thousand rupees, a visit to troubleshoot will cost you anywhere equal to the cost of a device. And therefore, these things, if they're not do it yourself, they're completely unviable. And that's why a lot of these costs are inflated, just accounting for the amount of service that needs to be done on these devices. Similarly, you've got setups in trucks. You just put them inside the box or you put them inside the container, and then the gateway keeps sending the information, both the location information as well as the temperature information to the cloud. What happens at the cloud is essentially allows you to do three things. First is tracking. You've got a complete visualization of how your product started, from where it started. You can create a link of all the assets that it has actually passed through, and then see what was the compliance level of the complete value chain through which the product was tracked. So that kind of a visualization network view is something which is possible to do if you have an end-to-end cold chain. If you have only a cold room, then you would only see what is happening inside one point of a cold room, and that doesn't give you too much information. The second is the reporting. So you're able to create a network compliance levels. You're able to create asset compliance levels at a dashboard level, so that you know where is broadly the compliance going wrong. And therefore, it's possible to troubleshoot or go deeper into cases where the compliance levels are much lower, right? Otherwise, if you have the 3,000 cold storages that Sarup is working on, to go every day into each chamber of those 3,000 cold rooms and see where, whether they're compliant or not, doesn't make sense, right? So you need this kind of a solution in order to sort of take care of the scale of operation. And then finally, you've got the monitoring, which is giving you the real-time alerts. It's giving you escalation matrix, like, the first error comes to somebody and then it goes to the second person. And then, eventually if it doesn't get resolved, it goes all the way up to the head of the company, and you're able to do the RCA, the kappa analysis, etc. So these are the sort of features that you can put, or you can activities you can perform on the platform. But to do any of this, the most important is for the data to come. And therefore, the solution that I had proposed earlier, in our view, having sort of looked at various kind of solutions that have been commercialized till now, I think that's one of the easiest and the most scalable to deploy. A warehouse, since you're talking about warehouse, not only monitoring the warehouse, but also mapping the warehouse is something that can be very easily done. I don't know what is happening close to my product because it's a huge warehouse. I know what is happening in some other part of the cold room near the evaporator machine. But if my product is not getting the right temperature, I have a problem, right? So I can very easily sort of map it to the product where I have kept my product in this case. So I'll conclude with this. I think the whole idea was to convey my point that I think one would need to look at wireless technologies, and these are not only easy to deploy, these are very cost effective. If you look at, per day monitoring cost would not come to more than 5 to 6 rupees, per chamber per day, and that's a fairly reasonable cost given the kind of cost of equipment and cost of materials that we store in these kind of units. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rajat, for taking up this topic and giving us an overview of end-to-end cold chain monitoring and compliance. We request our delegates and viewers to stay connected with us on our social media handle. Thermal Control Magazine is available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also download our app from Google Play and App Store. With this, we want to announce the closing of today's session. Request you to stay tuned for more such sessions. Thank you and goodbye.